Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to prepare your teas and decoctions, no matter what you're taking, if it's a root or a leaf or a flower or a seed or maybe a berry. So we're going to learn how to make the right preparations out of those different things. Usually something we could call a tea, and if it's boiled for a while on the stove, it's called a decoction. If we just put hot water on it, it's just a simple tea or an infusion, or maybe we let it steep during the whole night or for several hours, so it would be a long infusion. So there are different ways to prepare all those good herbs that we want to take, and we have to know which preparation method is the best for each one of them. So we're going to start, we have different things. We have root pieces like astragalus, you can see here. This is Rehmannia root, prepared Rehmannia. Then I have a Hoshuvu here. This is Hoshuvu. Root pieces. You can see this is very dense, of course, and very heavy. So I'm showing you actually of all those herbs, those are all 30 grams each. So this is 30 grams of Hoshuvu, of Rehmannia, of astragalus. You see it's different because the cut is different, the size is different. It seems it's a bit lighter, not so dense as the other two roots. This would be licorice root. It's also 30 grams, this quantity here. So you can see it's hard to measure this by tablespoon or teaspoon. I mean, first we have different sizes of spoons, and then the herbs, they all have different weight in relation to their volume. So of the licorice, you could say, yeah, 30 grams are maybe 3 tablespoons, 3 really full tablespoons. But of something else, for example, if we have a leaf like Gotu Kola, these are 30 grams of Gotu Kola. You can see this is a lot more. This would be many tablespoons more. I can't even tell you how many. It depends also on how the herb is cut. Even if I tell you, take so and so many tablespoons of Gotu Kola, I don't know if the herb that you bought is maybe cut more finely than the one I have. So it's also different. The volume is different. If I have smaller pieces, usually I have less tablespoons, and if it's really bulky and fluffy, the herb, so then it's different. It's just the weight in relation to the volume of the herb. So it's very hard to measure this in tablespoons or teaspoons. So I recommend weighing them out on a scale, so you know the proper dose that you're taking and you have to take. So you know this one time, then later maybe you have a jar and you know, okay, this jar is like 2/3 full, and that's my dose of daily Gotu Kola. You can measure it that way also. So, okay, so let's see. We also have seeds, for example. This would be another, another way to prepare. And we have flowers, like I have here some pretty chrysanthemum flowers or chamomile flowers or something like that. Elderflower. So those come in such different sizes. You can see my elderflowers here, they are so tiny, and my chrysanthemum is bigger, so it's also hard to compare these if we weigh it out on a tablespoon. So we have to measure it out on a scale. Okay, so let's come to the best ways to prepare all of those. So you can imagine a root, it takes more time that it gives off their goodness to the water, the constituents, as we say, but constituents, it just means, you know, the good medicine that we want to take. So we have to boil these for longer than, let's say, a leaf like Gotu Kola, nettle, alfalfa, horsetail, something like that. So we're going to use different preparations for all of these. With roots, we usually make a decoction, roots and barks actually. So this is also willow bark. Cinnamon is actually a bark, so if you have cinnamon pieces or sticks, you would boil them if you make a yogi tea or something. Some seeds you would boil if you make a yogi tea. You know, you put black peppercorn or fennel or cumin, coriander, something like that in your tea. You would also boil those. For seeds, I prefer grinding them just before I prepare them, grinding them fresh in a coffee grinder, and then I can actually make just a normal tea, just putting boiling water on them and letting it steep for 10 minutes, and I will get all the constituents out. If I would grind them way ahead, let's say if I grind my whole batch of my fennel, anise, caraway tea, I lose the volatile oils. So I can put it in a tight fitting jar, but it's better to grind those things freshly before you brew them. You can also use a pestle and mortar for like small quantities. It's totally fine. That way, by crushing those fennel and anise and those kind of seeds, cardamom, by crushing them, they release the volatile oils just the moment before you make the tea. You pour the hot water on it, let it steep for a while, and that way you get all the goodness out of them. Okay, the root we said we're gonna decoct them, we're gonna boil them for longer. So I measure out my weight, the 30 grams of my Rehmannia or my Hoshuvu. I put this in a pan, I put cold water on it, and then I bring it to a boil. And then I let it boil. In Chinese medicine, they would say an hour, maybe half an hour is fine and is still okay. Maybe you soak them a bit before, that also helps. But don't make it too complicated. If you have not much time for soaking this and that, just boil it for half an hour and it will be fine. Maybe you will let it sit for a while after that. This also helps. The more time the herb or the root or whatever it is exposed to the water, the more, of course, you get out of it. But there's always some loss. Only if we grind something to a powder and we take the whole powder, you get everything in. But of course, you have also a loss in your own digestion and you don't get everything out. So actually, by brewing a tea, we help the body we give the body those nutrients that we want, those medicinal constituents, in a form that the body can easily absorb them. So it can be a big advantage, and that's usually why we make teas, because we want to make those constituents that we are after. We want to make this more available to the body, and that's what happens if you drink a tea. Okay, so you're going to boil your root, your Hoshuvu, for half an hour, your Rehmannia, astragalus, licorice, things like that. Eleuthero is a root. You can see also those roots. This is Eleuthero. It comes in all kinds of cuts and different sizes, so it's all a different weight that you would have to weigh out on the kitchen scale. You can measure it by the tablespoon. Once you know, of course, you know my type of astragalus that is cut like that, and from this batch I know that 30 grams are 4 tablespoons. You can then, of course, know your own measure of the own herbs that you bought. Okay, so this would be the decoction. Then let's talk about our long infusions. If you have an herb that's a leaf or just the above ground portion, it can contain some flowers also. That's usually doesn't make a difference. But let's say we have a leaf like nettle, Gotu Kola, horsetail, alfalfa, things like that. Then we want to brew them for a bit longer. We don't want to just put boiling water on them and after 10 minutes we drink it, because after that time we don't have yet everything extracted, or the most of it extracted. So we can do this overnight. I actually have here my Gotu Kola long infusion. So I put this in a French press. I let it steep overnight, and in the morning I can just press it down and really press it hard so I get everything out of there. So this is about, for a long infusion, I would use, for 30 grams of herb, I used half a liter of water, a pint of water. For the decoction also, I think in the decoction, you can go a bit lower. You can maybe, if you decoct 30 grams of Rehmannia or Hoshuvu or something like that, astragalus, you can use a bit less, like 350 milliliters or something. And you boil it, you also have some water loss, so even if you start with half a liter, you end up with a little bit less. Okay. So for the Gotu Kola, yeah, you shouldn't use more, because you don't want to drink more of a tea that maybe doesn't taste that amazing, honestly. It's okay, the taste is okay, but so you don't want to have lots of water. You want to drink other things in your day also. So you use the least amount of water that still extracts everything. So you don't want to use too little water, because then you reach saturation of the water. The water cannot absorb more of the constituents of the herb. It's also expanding, you know, if this, now I pressed it already, but the herb expands in the water. So you have to give it room to expand. And you need to have enough water so that all the constituents get extracted into that water that you in the end going to drink. So it's for a infusion, long infusion, normally 30 grams of herb and half a liter of water. And for a decoction, kind of also, because some of the water boils off and you end up with less, or you start with less. If you leave the lid on, you can start right away with maybe 350 milliliters and decoct your 30 grams of fruits in the water. You can also make for several days. You know, you can decoct 60 grams and use a liter of water, or 120 grams and use 2 liters of water. So you can make the math on that and prepare your tea for the next 3 days, for example, and put the rest in the fridge. Yeah. Okay, so that would be leaves and roots. Then we have flowers like chamomile or chrysanthemum. So those, you don't have to boil them for long. You don't have to let them steep overnight or something. They give off easily their constituents elderflowers or something like that. You just pour the boiling water on it and let it steep for 10 minutes or 20. 10 minutes is usually even fine. You put a lid on them so they don't lose the essential oils, the volatile oils like chamomile or something. You don't want to lose the good smell of the herb, because this is also part. You want to drink it and smell it and ingest it when you're drinking the tea. So that's flowers. Then we have berries. For example, hawthorn berries, elderberries, something like that, goji berries. With berries, some berries are not so hard, like a goji berry. You can easily just make a tea out of, but I wouldn't throw the berry out in the end. You know, usually there is still so much left in the berry that you want to consume the berries whole. So if they taste good, like goji berries, it shouldn't be a problem. You just soak them in your breakfast or something, put them in a smoothie. There's so many ways you can use them, like raisins. And you just eat them whole, I would say. Other berries, like hawthorn berries, for example, they don't give off their constituents so easily. So actually hawthorn berries often, I recommend grinding them up to a powder or buying them as a powder and then just taking the powder, so you're sure you get everything in. Because even if you make a tea, you know, you still have the nice red flesh on the berry, and it just gave off a little of the constituents to the water, but not all of it. And you can mash it up and really like eat the pulp of the berry or things like that. But it's a bit more complicated with berries. It depends on the type of berry. So sometimes we take those as a powder, or we make a tea, we make a decoction. But we have to be aware, we have to really check, are we throwing out the best part? You know, should we better eat the whole goji berry, for example, or mash up and really get the pulp of the hawthorn berry or something like that. Or elderberries, maybe we can buy a juice, a whole 100% elderberry juice or something, and have them as a juice. Or if we find them in nature, maybe we can prepare a syrup or something where we really get more of the good things out of those berries. Okay, so we covered roots that we are decocting, 30 grams in half a liter or a pint of water for half an hour, boiling them, and then maybe letting them sit a little while more, or even soaking them before. This also helps. Or I also used to do with my hoshovu that I boil them the first round, and then I cut the root up in tiny pieces and I boil them again, maybe with the batch from the next day or so, to really be sure that everything gets out and I get the most out of it. But those are extra steps, you know. It's always more important, keep it simple and do it, than thinking, oh my god, this is all too complicated, so I better don't do it at all, you know. So choose the simplest way that is doable for you and do it. It is better you get something out of those herbs and you take them than saying, oh my god, this all sounds too scary and too complicated. So it really is not complicated. You can just prepare your long infusion the night before. You just boil the water while you brush your teeth, and you just let it sit overnight. The next morning you press it down, you put it in the fridge or drink it right away. So that's super easy to make, actually. So those things, they integrate into your routine. After a while you will find that it's not so hard to remember all of this, and it becomes second nature. So okay, I hope I explained all the little details. So this is the leaf, is the long infusion, also 30 grams, half a liter of water, 1 pint of water. Let it steep overnight. Flowers, we can just brew them, like chamomile, chrysanthemum, elderflower, things like that. Bark is the same as a root, let's say, in that sense that we prefer to make a decoction because it's a harder piece of the plant. And berries is a whole other story, depends on the berry. So if you can consume the berry whole, or there's of course also, I mean, there are hundreds more preparations of each of those herbs. You know, Gotu Kola, you can make a pesto out of. It's actually really delicious. You can mix it with other greens like spinach, or you can make a soup out of that. You can cook with your herbs. You can, astragalus is really famous for being giving a nice flavor to some broth and soup. You can first make the decoction of astragalus, then take the water with the herb pieces, the root pieces strained out, and cook rice with the water, or a soup, congee. The options are limitless. But those are the most simple ways to take your herb every day, to take them, to prepare them in the right way, depending if it's a root, if it's a leaf, if it's a flower. And I hope you found this information useful. And give me feedback. I'm always happy to hear from you. Ciao.